the ground rules. So I'll introduce myself and then I'll allow the various lovely associates here to introduce themselves as well. So I'm Ian Gilbert. I'm the founder of Independent Thinking. It's a company I set up 26.5 years ago, nearly 27 years ago, to work with young people around thinking and learning and memory and motivation. And even I was a French teacher, my NQT year, and I'm going to ask the associates here to tell us a little bit about how they started and where their NQT year was and what happened. But my NQT year was in Northampton, and I was a French teacher, although I didn't really want to be a French teacher. Krista might take issue with me on this in a little while. I wanted to go in and work with young people on thinking skills, learning and memory and motivation and creativity. And I had a French degree, and there's not much else I could do with it. So I trained as a French teacher, and I had the job of not wanting to teach French to people who didn't want to learn French, which seemed to work out pretty well. But it also meant that I could use my NQT year for doing all these extracurricular stuff. We did lunchtime classes and after school classes, and I did special lessons for the sixth form, was all around the area that I wanted to really focus on. And then while I was teaching in my NQT, and then subsequent years, I met a colleague in the staff room who liked the work that I was doing in this area, and she said, we'd like to lend you, my husband's sold his business, we've got some money to invest, we'd like to lend you £20,000 to set up a company. And it was like, wow, okay, I'll go for that. And like I said, that was 26.5 years ago, and Independent Thinking was born out of what started as the reason I went into teaching, and then all the extra work that I did in my NQT year of just really working with young people directly on the thinking skills stuff, if you like. That was the starting point, but it did start. Its genesis was in my NQT year. So I have a lot to thank Dustin Upper School, or whatever it's called now, probably some sort of academy in Northampton, and all the people who were involved in that, including, I found out just recently, James Acaster's dad, who was head of year and had an office next door to mine. So he was an interesting guy. So so Independent Thinking has sort of grown over these 2.5 decades, and it's just a platform for fantastic educators to talk about education, to talk about what we believe education is about. It's putting the child at the centre. It's more than just about the grades and the inspections and the results. It's far bigger. They're important, but it's far bigger than that. And then these associates that we've sort of just drawn towards us, who are just wonderfully warm and genuine educators who are passionate about education, but coming at it from all different sorts of angles, as you'll hear as we sort of meet our 5 other panelists today. So I'll get them to introduce themselves in any particular order. So who you are and what you're doing now, and where it started as your NQT year, and where that was and what you were doing, and what you can remember from that particular year. A bit like I've just shared with you what I can remember. So who would like to go first? Raise your hand. Jackie Beere, OBE. Switch your mic on, Jackie. Not on yet. There we go. No. Jack.
It's coming.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm a primary trained teacher who went into secondary school on supply, TA, working as a TA, then on supply, and ended up working as an English teacher, becoming passionate as Ian about thinking skills, emotional intelligence, and doing a whole Key Stage 3 sort of learning to learn type course, and teaching English and teaching media studies, and eventually teaching A-level, though my head of department was against it, because what did I know? I didn't even have an English degree. However, I, fortunately enough, ended up being able to teach all those subjects, and becoming eventually, after many years, an AST, Advanced Skills Teacher, if anybody knows or has heard of that particular grade, which was all about specialising in teaching and learning in the classroom. And eventually, after about 2 decades, becoming a head teacher of my large secondary school, 1,500 kids. Would never have believed it could happen on that first NQT year. Would never have believed that it could happen, because I was such a nervous little chicken about the whole thing of going into secondary school, being a teacher, standing up there in front of everybody. Despite being a very extrovert person, I was very terrified of public speaking. I was terrified of, I was anxious, and I suppose all of that has led me to where I am now, which is coaching and working with people who have those sorts of anxiety problems and it's an anxiety provoking job, being a teacher, standing in front of people, having someone coming in to watch you and standing up in front of assembly and telling them what you're doing, and then parents and all that stuff. There's a lot of pressure. And I suppose I've got fascinated with how we can manage our minds to be the best we can be, and working with ITL and all these wonderful colleagues you're going to see today. It just makes you think anything is possible. Believe me, I would never have dreamed in a million years in my NQT year I'd be doing what I'm doing now, training teachers, writing books, doing all the things I do. So whatever state you're in at the moment, believe me, it's the start of a wonderful career, and it certainly has been for me. So I think that's me.
Thank you, Jackie. That is reassuring. What I'll come back to as well, do remind me of your work around Learn to Learn, because it was certainly when I started, it was fashionable is the wrong word because that doesn't do it the right justice. But it was a lot of schools were looking into it, and then for various reasons, it became the thing that you don't do.
Change of government, that's what happened.
Yeah, well, yes, we'll call it that. But what's interesting is, and I know we can plug your books, but there's another book that's just come out by a guy called James Mannion and his colleague, and sorry, I can't remember her name, but I'm sure Nina will probably find it. And they've written a book which has looked into the research around teaching children Learn to Learn and the benefits of that and the science behind it and the research behind that. And that book just came out. I think it's called Fear is the Biggest Killer, or Fear is the Mind Killer. And I had a look at it about, I don't know, 6 or 7 months ago before it was published, and it was really reassuring. So the things that you're doing, Jackie, and like your book around the Learner's Toolkit it's been shown by James's work, James and his colleagues' work, that it does have an impact. It can make a difference, and that's really reassuring.
And I'll come back. Sorry,
yeah, you disappeared and came back. We were just saying it's good stuff. It's good stuff, but we'll come back to it. You can talk perhaps a little bit about it and how it sort of fits in with the focus on learning as an NQT. Nina, just put the link there. Thank you for that, Nina. Howell, do you want to go next?
Yeah, hiya. I was so engrossed with what Jackie was saying, I've forgotten what the question was now. Where
did it all begin?
Yeah, I was accidentally an NQT, accidentally a teacher, and then but found I really loved it, but I found it quite hard my first year, and I work a lot now, obviously, with teacher trainees and new teachers, and part of my work now is to motivate them to stick at it, because it is such a challenge at times. And I found that I loved the classroom, and although I couldn't articulate how I felt all the time about it, I found a lot of what I was doing was working. I didn't know what a lot of it was called, but some of it was just, I don't know, having a personality. Some of it was liking kids. Some of it was just being enthusiastic and passionate about my subject. I was an English teacher who then taught drama, then taught a bit of dance because no one else would. And then accidentally, due to a timetabling error, I taught German. That was a difficult year for me. One of the kids said, "Sir, you don't know what you're on about," and I went, "Yeah." But it was quite hard, and I found it hard. And I always found teaching full time really quite difficult, but I loved it so much. And one of the problems for me, and this might not be problematic for the current audience, but one of the problems with teaching is you get promoted out of the classroom, and I wanted to stay in the classroom. So I, like Jackie, I was something called an advanced skills teacher. You basically got your own Ofsted inspection just for you, all wrapped up beautifully. And I loved being an AST because that's when I started getting hooked into research and really looking at practice and looking at helping other colleagues and other teachers. So that the natural road for me then was not up to leadership and beyond, but rather to just keep moving sideways almost and up like that. So I went to work in pupil referral units with secondary and primary children. And now I find myself working across the phases, working with teachers and working in classrooms, modelling pedagogy. So last week I was working in nursery and early years, for 2 days. And I've got to tell you this, secondary colleagues, we think sometimes it's tough, but when you go down there and spend some time down there, flipping heck, I were like an extra in Saving Private Ryan. It was hard work, but so I left full-time teaching, which wasn't a cop-out. It's just it was the natural thing to do because I was really interested in exploring other classrooms. I was able to do it, and I just did. And now I sit here thinking a lot about secondary. I've just spent last Thursday and Friday this week working with secondary colleagues, and it's tough out there. It's really tough, and you know, we can sit in webinars and try and cheer each other up, but we all know it's really hard. And colleagues tuning in right now can feel that. But the good news is there's whole networks of support now from people like Jackie, who are doing proper coaching, and Nina, who's looking at well-being, and other colleagues here. There's a lot of support out there. So, you know, if you're a bit nervous and tired and anxious at the moment, then there's a lot of help out there to support you, not least us.
Yeah. Okay. No, I like that. Thank you for that. There is. Do reach out. I've seen on Twitter, you know, especially at the beginning of term, people saying I'm an NQT, I'm really worried. And I mean, teaching is in the list of stressful jobs anywhere in the world. It's usually in the top 4 or 5. It's an incredibly stressful job. Then bring in the NQT element to it. Your first year has always been more stressful. I remember when I was NQT, people were saying, you know, the research about the number of NQTs who are off sick in that first term was quite high. I was quite proud. I managed to get through the first term without any time off. That was a sort of a mark for me. But then doing it during a pandemic where it's just so much chaos for everybody is just is even harder. So kudos to all the NQTs who are still here, who are going through those three levels of difficulty. And that's why we're trying to do this. Is there anything that, you know, tonight is of help or of use, or just a reminder that you're okay, that you're not on your own? Then I think that's a job well done. And one of the things I think as well that's coming through from the 3 of us who have spoken so far is life in education that is still in the classroom, but doesn't have to be the classroom teacher. There's a lot of people who just sort of work their way through into that career, like Jackie did, all the way through from a supply teacher to the head teacher and beyond. But there's so many opportunities and in the whole world of education without always staying in the classroom, if that's not the thing that really appeals. But you don't have to leave the world of education to grow. And Howell, I think you refer to yourself as a travelling teacher, and that's very much and all the EITL associates, we can all, you know, you will regularly find us in front of a group of kids in the real world or virtual world doing our stuff, which keeps it real. Keeps it real. Talking of keeping it real, Lisa, you can go next, and you might be able to talk to us about how much time you spent in the cupboard. Lisa, can you unclick yourself? There we go.
Yes. But I pressed space and it didn't work. I thought that was a new trick that I'd learned. Yeah, so I'm still in a cupboard. I'm in a cupboard right now because I've just moved house, so apologies for looking a bit rough. I started in a school in Gateshead. Well, I didn't. I started as a classroom assistant, and I never ever thought that I could be a teacher until I spent a year as a classroom assistant. And if you've got a classroom assistant, please use them, because I spent a year sitting in a corner observing teaching. And it was through that year that I started realizing, hang on, if you just did it like that, or if you know, the way that you're speaking to that student is why you're getting that reaction from that student, and just sitting there for a full year observing made me think, I've got to try it and stop saying, you know, you could have done that. So I didn't get onto the teaching course in the first year. So I became a project coordinator, where I got given £70,000 and got told to get those kids 5A to C. I got that job because apparently I was the best of a really bad bunch. And I made a joke on the day, and I made them, you know, I don't know, they just said it must be your personality, you'll be able to do something with those kids. So accidentally I got that job. And then the year after that, I became a teacher. And I think that journey from classroom assistant to doing the project coordination, which I had the best fun with, and then being the NQT, I feel like when I was an NQT, I was a little bit more confident because I really did know what happened within the classroom. But I started with 2 other NQTs, so you can imagine how nervous our department were. They thought they were going to fall apart that year. And actually having those 2 other NQTs is what really got me through, because it was hard work. It was a lot of work, but finding that little tribe was just the best part of that year. And obviously we're still best friends now. So I went from, you know, all that journey. I was listening to obviously the other associates there and thinking about how many similarities that we've got. So I became an AST. Thinking about my 4th year of teaching, I heard about it, and I just thought, what a brilliant thing to do, to just learn how to be a better teacher. And it was all accidents that got me there, though, a little bit like Howell. You know, it was accidentally kind of fell into the roles that I fell into. So if you're right there at the beginning of your career now and you're looking forward and you're just thinking, how do I get to that and that and that, don't, it'll happen. Just enjoy where you're at right now. When things go wrong, look at them as a learning opportunity. So I'll tell you, I'll end with just one of the worst things I did as an NQT. I had a class that wouldn't behave. They were throwing bits of paper around the room, you know, just really messing on, about year 10, big bully lads. Let's bully Mrs. Ashes, Mrs. McCardle I was at the time, Miss McCardle. And I thought, right, what am I going to do about this? And so I picked up the bin, don't know why this happened, picked up the bin, and I just threw the paper out the bin all over the floor. I thought, I don't know why I did it. I thought maybe the shock factor would work. Turns out it didn't work. They all just laughed and they left the room, and I had to tidy the whole lot up. So, you know, it doesn't matter how bad things get. I can look back on that now, and I've learned from that and never do that again. So when things are going wrong, just look at it from the angle of what can I learn from that, and don't beat yourself up too much, and enjoy the journey. So that's me. Right now, I'm working with another one of our associates, Ian Taylor, for the Academy's Enterprise Trust. So I'm a subject specialist for English, and again, total accident how I got in there, but spend most of my time in front of kids teaching, and I absolutely love it.
So thank you, Lisa. Your book about being in the cupboard, just explain that connection, otherwise people wonder why I'm talking about cupboards.
Yeah, so when I was a classroom assistant, one of the teachers actually didn't just put me in the corner, they put me in the cupboard. So, and I mean literally in the cupboard, not a metaphor at all. It was, they didn't want me in the classroom, they didn't know what to do with me, so they said I could go and do some work in the cupboard. I didn't have any work to do, so I just was watching through the crack in the cupboard door. And so the teacher in the cupboard book is the metaphor for stepping back and being able to observe teaching from the outside. So all of the different roles that I've done, classroom assistant, supply teacher, you know, leadership, everything, it's about being able to step back from that role and observe what's really going on. It's really about problem solving in education, but yeah, you know, all the problems that I've come across and just ways of solving them from the cupboard, which I'm still in.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I was going to go to Krista next, but because based on something Lisa just said, I want to go to Nina, because that moment of you're in your classroom, it's all kicking off, you don't know what to do, so you just suddenly do something out of thin air. That resonates with your story as well, doesn't it, from your NQT year?
Oh, yes. Anyway, I'm sending you a lot of love from lockdown Wales, and talking about NQT years, I started my career an NQT straight into a head of department job. No word of a lie. Nobody even showed me how to write a scheme of work. I had no clue, apart from the fact that I was absolutely passionate about my subject, which was music. And music to me, not only did it help me with my own well-being, but it was just a way of engaging people and finding out new ways of connecting, etc., etc. And I worked in a really, really tough school in Hampshire, in Gosport, and at that time we had 69% on the EBD register, and it's safe to say there were some really special moments in my classroom. For example, in the first few weeks, chairs and tables being tipped over, there was a siege in the classroom, one of the kids got shot in the neck with a BB gun, the head teacher was punched in the nose, and sometimes things were going okay. Although this particular day, I just thought to myself, I think I need to leave. There is no place for me in this profession. I'm obviously rubbish. I did all the stuff out of the Lee Cantor Assertive Discipline book, like I did the Look, you know, all the stuff that you read in books, and none of it was happening. So I had this little stage in my classroom, and I thought, it's going to be mayhem if I don't do anything right now. So I went to the shelf, and I took a CD off the shelf, hoping to God it wasn't going to be the Mr. Blobby song, I Need You to Know. And I just thought, I'm going to pick track number 4 because this is desperate. I put the track on, had the pause on the remote, and I stood there and I said, right, put your heads on the desk, we're going on a journey. Oh, and by the way, close your eyes as well. And it was like, what is she up to? Heads went on the desks went back to their right spaces, they closed their eyes, and this piece of music which played transformed my life as a teacher and the lives of the children and the young people I was working with. It's a very, very special track. It was Gabriel's oboe from The Mission. And at the end of it, they wouldn't move, they were silent, they lifted their heads, and I said, right, bring your chairs forward. I think we need to have a little chat. That was really the first day that I learned to become a proper teacher, knowing that I needed to get to know all the young people that are in my classroom. What happened from using that music extract is nobody's business. It transformed everything for me. And then I did loads of research. I got a master's from it. Mr. Gilbert discovered me. He gave me a lease of life into the world. And I guess music is still in my heart. It's still in my mind. And the research was all about music and the mind. And then the first book I got published, courtesy of Crown House and Independent Thinking, was The Little Book of Music for the Classroom. And I am so proud to know that it has transformed the lives of so many teachers and young people. So that was the beginning. And if I talk any more, the whole 90 minutes will be gone. So I think I should just leave it at that point there for now.
Thank you for that. This idea about all of us sort of accidentally becoming teachers or trying to go there and ending up over there seems to be sort of coming through, or accidentally learning how to be half decent teachers in the process as well. And always from things that they can't really teach you in the books or on the courses. There's an element of where you just got to go in and make it up as you go along and live with what happens next, really. Talking of which, Krista, tell us where you started and how it was and what went wrong.
Well, I wanted to be a teacher from my first French lesson when I was 11. That was it. So I didn't fall into this. I went into this both feet, running into it. This was the job, the career for me. And my school was a small school, 5 years. I didn't think it was that far away. I'm based in Bristol at the minute, and my partner's down here, and that's where I wanted to be. And I got my first job after my first interview, which was amazing, in the Forest of Dean. And I thought, oh, it's not that far. It's only over the bridge. 33 miles door to door from where I was living, and I just got my first car as well. I could drive, but just got my first car. But I didn't realise that in the Forest of Dean, before I even got to school every day, I would have sheep roaming across the roads, because in the Forest of Dean, they don't have to keep sheep in fields. They're allowed to roam around. So are wild boars. So if you see sheep in the road, you're not allowed to blow your horn. You've just got to wait for them to move along. Otherwise, you could be fined by a local farmer, which was a bit of a revelation, I have to say. And it meant I'd have to leave my house about 6:30 every morning just to get into school. My day was eventful. I did try going up from Bristol via Gloucester and in that way, but still, as soon as you came into the wonderful, glorious Forest of Dean, it just changed. Which has got its own ecosystem as well, funnily enough. So the weather was always different there, which affected the kids quite dramatically. And actually in my school, when I did an old school Beere, I was the last year in at my university to do it. In Manchester, and my second subject was special educational needs, and we were literally the last cohort going through. So my lovely head of department, who'd interviewed me in like February, end of February time, said, "Oh, Krista, yeah, great. Oh, you've got this second qualification, marvelous. Can you teach German?" I went, no, but I can teach French, and of course I'll learn. Because I was keen, I was like, yes, I'm going to get to do the best job in the world, the job I've always wanted to do. And he gave me. There were all the year groups were set into and the top group was group 1 all the way down to group 8. Well, every single one of my timetable in my NQT year was either group 5, 6, 7 or 8. So I kid you not, that drive home from the Forest of Dean, I cried most of the time because I was driving home from the best job in the world that actually didn't seem that great because I was really tired. It wasn't working, but I'd been training and I wanted to do this and I was keen, and it wasn't working. I couldn't get through to these kids and I was like, how am I going to do this? And I just focused on the behavior and the relationships. Howell talked earlier about that, and it was about getting to know those kids, because for me I was like, well, how can you not love French? It's like the best subject ever. How could you not love this? But for these kids in the Forest of Dean who used to go rabbiting with their parents on a weekend, some of them didn't have mobile phones, and I kid you not, and Ian, I know that you've been to this school because I met you there in my NQT year. I kid you not, some of the kids you'd say, oh, I live in Bristol, because I was like, oh miss, where are you from? I live in Bristol. And it was like, oh, you've traveled many moons to get here. And I was like, no, it's like 30 miles. No. And some of the kids hadn't been here, you know, it was so interesting. And that really gave me an awakening. I mean, I didn't think I'd had the most privileged kind of growing up or anything, but actually compared to these kids, you know, I was well traveled. I was so much. And that was my first encounter into this, right, okay, I really need to look at what I'm doing from the children's perspective, which I'd never, despite doing a PGCE, BEd for 5 years, 1 year over in France, teaching in schools and stuff. That's the first awakening. And throughout those tears in the car on the way home, my little Peugeot 106, it just came to be, and that changed it forever. And the end of the NQT year, one of the heads of year was was pregnant with twins, who I believe you do know as well, Jo Christian, and I was offered her, I applied for and got her pastoral job, and I then in my NQT year secured a middle leadership position, pastoral middle leadership position, where I was head of year, and just loved that. And then for my remaining 20 years working in secondary school, I was always in leadership roles, but it was always about the relationship and the kids.
That's powerful again. So the relationship, and I want to come to this idea about behaviour, because I know that's an issue for all NQTs, is what's the secret of the behaviour stuff that isn't about the zero tolerance and kicking them out if they shuffle their papers in the wrong way or underline with the wrong coloured pen. So it's about the behaviour, but what you're saying there as well, Krista, is about understanding it's about the relationships and seeing it from the child's, from the student's point of view, something that you hadn't picked up before. And the other thing that I think all of you have described really is a sense of some awakening, some event that happened at the end of a string of awful events, where you suddenly got it, where you suddenly realised that okay, I understand now a little bit better, and that your career sort of really took off at that point. And that's not something you can plan for or build into your lessons. It just happens. And I think part of that as well, that I think what you've all said, and I know I did as well, is this idea about you say yes. There will be, in the nature of a school and the relationships that you have, and the cut and thrust and the opportunity, there will be things where people will say, do you fancy doing that? And the answer is yes. That the very first inset I ever delivered was as an NQT. And one of the deputies said, oh, we're going to do some stuff on behaviour management. There's a folder here. All you have to do is sort of, work your way through it and deliver that to the staff. Who wants to do that? And it was like, yeah, I'll have a go. I had no idea how to do it, what I was doing. Had no real authority to do it as an NQT, but that didn't matter. It was just, somebody asked and I said yes. And what happened there from a creativity point of view, I remember I sat and planned it, and then looked at what I planned and I thought, this is crap. It was really boring. So I thought, how can I start it in a way that no one else would ever start an inset? So that I just knew that I was coming at it from a different angle for my own creativity, bearing in mind that creativity was one of the things that I was teaching. And the phrase that came into my head, I remember exactly where I was sitting in the language lab, if you remember that, a table with a tape recorder in it, I think it's been described.
Big headphones.
Yeah, headphones where you can listen to other people talking or not talking in French. But I was sitting there planning this one lunchtime, and the phrase that came into my head was, so I said to this duck, and that I wrote that down, and that was my starting point for an inset, whole school inset as an NQT on behaviour management. So if you creativity-wise, if you change your starting point, your journey changes. You might get to the same destination, but your journey changes. So that always sort of stayed with me. So the answer is yes. So no matter what, as an NQT, no matter how busy you are, no matter how much you've got to do, no matter how under the cosh you are, when you're given an opportunity, the answer is yes, and you think about it later. Behaviour-wise, I sat down yesterday and sort of wrote a list of things we could talk about today. Remember, people watching on, the delegates here, there is a Q&A button there if you want to sort of throw any questions in. Otherwise, we'll just carry on talking, it's fine. But I know behaviour is an issue. And from my experience in that first year, I know I was given some bottom set groups, teaching French. And one of the games that I realised was being played very early on was they just wanted me to shout. So I just refused to play the game. I just didn't shout. And I just remember, sir, why aren't you shouting? They just couldn't get around this idea that I wasn't going to play the game, whereas they do something bad, I shout at them, and that's how we organise things. And that refusal to play the game of school according to the bottom set kids, and bearing in mind in that school we used to arrange sets according to postcode. They never said that, but that's what went on. It still does. I don't know if everybody's done any research, but look at your bottom set, look at the postcodes, and make some sort of link between the two. You'll see what's going on. But I just refused to play that game, and I smiled a lot. And this idea about don't smile till Christmas, which I know is still out there because people are still being told that. I see that talking to NQTs on Twitter. I was the complete opposite. It was without looking completely inane. It was just having a laugh, having a smile as much as I possibly could. And that messed with their heads as well. But it kept me sane because I wasn't going to lose it. Once I lost it with one of my tutor group, and I took him outside and I just really shouted at him from close. And afterwards, he sort of came up to me and said, "Oh, that was good, sir. You did that well." I said, "Yeah, I know. I've been practicing that." Anyway, we just were able to sort of explore it from a meta situation and realise that we were just playing the game and it was okay. He was a nice lad. He didn't mean it, and I didn't mean it, and off we went on our ways. So, from a behaviour point of view, who wants to sort of just share some thoughts? Because you've all got different experiences of different schools, but everybody's got an experience of challenging children. Who would like to go first? Raise your hand. Nina, go on.
For me, over the years, I think that, I mean, when you say behaviour, most people think bad or naughty behaviour, but there are different types of behaviours, okay? So if we go in with the, shall we say, the one that's disruptive, the one that's causing a problem, what I've learned over the years, and definitely from working in sort of a therapeutic type way and coaching with well-being, is that often the most challenging disruptive behaviour, it's a coded message, okay? The child or the young person is saying to you, my world is not okay. And I'm going to make sure that you hear, and the whole class hears about this behaviour, and understand that whatever is happening to me in my head, in my heart, whether it be work or in school or out of school or all these other contributing factors, it is not okay. And actually, I feel safe with you as this teacher because I know that you're going to withdraw me or send me out so that I can either tell somebody, or if you've got a good relationship with me, you're going to ask me what's wrong. And then you've got the other behaviour then where you've got some children who just really go into themselves, and you've got to have your radar eyes on. You've got to really get to know them and find out, you know, are they changing physically? Can you see a sort of a mood change, a colour change? And that could be maybe that a child is suffering with some trauma or well-being issues, and they've suddenly decided that they're going to mute themselves. And by muting themselves, that's their coded message of saying to you, my world is not okay. So my tip to you is this: look out for the coded messages, because what they are is they're asking you for help. And sometimes the worst type of behaviour is what I call the love behaviour. I mean, I'll never forget being called a fat effing sumo cow walking down the corridor, and then the child saying to me, I knew that you'd asked me to come and speak to you quietly, and the reason I did that is I need to tell you this. And then her world fell apart. So that's one of my little tips.
Okay, all right. No, thank you for that. There was a school up in Scotland, I think, tweeting earlier today, and I retweeted it through at ITL Worldwide, and they were saying they are no longer talking about poor behaviour, they're talking about distressed behaviour. And so by trying to change the language that we're using, it starts to give us insights into the reasons for the behaviour, not just look at the behaviour. Without it being soft, it's not about letting the poor behaviour go. It's not about turning a blind eye to it, far from it, but it is trying to understand the reason. And some of it is just they're messing around. Like I said, they're playing that game. So you treat that accordingly. But some of it is it's a form of communication. So what are they trying to communicate? And if you look at the language that's being used, and part of that as well is being aware of the language that your colleagues are using. Whenever I used to be asked by NQTs, what advice would you give? And it was like, for me, a while back, certainly, maybe it's changed, I don't know, but it was stay out the staff room. Use your lunch times to just build a relationships, do extra clubs, spend time, have your lunch with the kids. The more you can make those connections and stay away from some of the negative energy in the school who are just moaning and complaining about the kids, the better. And also you will find the staff who are positive and who are open and who are looking at things in a different sort of way. So thank you for that. There's questions coming through. Now, there's one I want to put to, actually both to Lisa and to Howell, because it's from Craig, who's a drama teacher in a rough school. And he's saying the bottom set year 9 has got many different personalities. It feels like a war to get through. I get through to one of the 25, and I get through to one and the rest of them are bonkers. How would you approach a class who have their own groups with their own different problems? So it's not a class, it's 25 different challenges on an ongoing basis. So you've got Howell, you've got drama Howell and Lisa as well. Lisa, do you want to go?
Yeah, so there's a group that I'm working with right now who it sounds exactly the same. So we have a year 9 class, and it's an NQT who I'm coaching, and every single child has their own individual problems. Therefore, you put them all together, and it's just like that. I think something that Ian said was one of the things that we've started to do, which is they have an SEN area. So the students from that class, most of them have special educational needs, and so they have lunch together in an area. And so we started to go and have our lunch in that area as well to get to know the students. Now I know COVID has stopped that a little bit, but that really getting to know individual students in their own time, not approaching them and sitting next to them and trying to make friends with them, but just being in their area and seeing them in a different light. So if you stood on the yard, if you stood whilst they're having lunch, then they start to approach you. And what we noticed was we noticed just how different they looked in that time. So in the classroom, we had, say, we'll call him Callum. In the classroom, Callum's really difficult to manage. We've got all of these other behaviours going on around Callum. Callum's wanting to get up. He's wanting to get out of the classroom. He's really obsessing over different things. I think he called the teacher a fuckwit at one point. Sorry about that. But it was really hard to deal with for this NQT. And then when we went into that other area, we saw the exact same behaviours that we were seeing in the classroom, the same obsessiveness, the same not being able to sit still. And we just were, it's just Callum. So it's the way that Callum is. Now, I'm not saying that's easy to deal with, but it was easier to be sat in that classroom with Callum and to realise that behaviour was not against you. That was Callum's special educational need. So for us, getting to know those students was the biggest breakthrough that we had. The next thing that we needed people support around that NQT. So we needed heads of year, we needed anybody who was free at that time to be able to come and support as we were building the relationships. And I know a lot of schools think that that's a cop-out. So I think it's Vic Goddard, one of our associates, who I heard him say recently that he used to think that as a leader, he had to step back and allow his teachers to deal with poor behaviour problems because that empowered them. But he said that he's recently stopped doing that and behaviour has changed. So he said now he realises it's his role as a leader to support with behaviour, to make sure that those teachers can just teach. And I thought that's brilliant, that. So get as much support as you can. So we've got the SENCO of the school regularly visits that classroom and gives the teacher support. We also had the SENCO of that class teach the class for the NQT. So actually take the class for the NQT with the NQT sitting at the back of the classroom. so that, and it didn't go perfectly, which was brilliant, because that's what the NQT needed to see, was that this behavior is not something that can be just controlled with personality, or, you know, controlled because you're a perfect teacher. It did not go perfectly well, but those little things, as much support as you can get from other people and getting to know those students as much as you possibly can, is step one. And then make sure that your lessons are as consistent as possible. So make sure that when they come through the room, they know what to expect. Make sure they know what your absolute limits are, and stick to them. Don't just let them get away with it, and have fun with those students wherever and whenever possible. So that's my take on it.
Nah, that's brilliant. Thank you for that. So consistency, care, getting to know them, spending time, seeing them in a different place, not taking it personally, which is hard sometimes, especially like Nina was saying, when they're making these personal attacks. So you professionally, you rise above that. You don't let it continue, and you address it, but you do it in a way that is moving things forward and not just going to make the relationship even worse. I want to come to
our mantra is just to pick up what you said there. Our mantra is, and that's both me and the NQT do it together, is no emotional response. No emotional response. So when you're about to chuck a bucket of paper across the classroom because you're just so upset with what they're doing and you want to kick back, we just repeat in our heads, no emotional response, no emotional response, till we're calm enough to make the right decision.
Yeah. Neurologically, you can see you've got reptilian brains that are flaring. And what I've always said to teachers, if your reptilian brain's kicking off and their reptilian brain are kicking off, and it's not a thinking brain, it's just a purely brain. And what you end up in the situation is two lizards shouting at each other, a big lizard and a little lizard, and we're not going to get anywhere. So it's not personal. It's about, okay, well, I'm going to go over there, you're going to go over there, we're just going to let our lizard brains calm down and long enough in order that we can talk this through. But if you tell somebody off while they're in that lizard-like behavior with the reptilian brain all ago, it's just another form of attack. It's just going to carry on that process whereby they're going to try and defend themselves one way or another. If you look at the work of Dr. Andrew Curran, the paediatric neurologist, who's an associate as well, he does a lot of work about this, understanding the reptilian brain and the brain hormones that we need and the neurotransmitters that we need in order to get learning to happen, and what gets in the way of learning happening. So maybe Nina can put in the little book of big stuff about the brain, which I'm not sure whether that's on the 30% discount NQT one, but let us know, and if you want it, we'll perhaps find a way. I want to come to Jackie's view of leadership and behaviour, but let me just go to Howell. And there's another question from a drama teacher. I've got a DIY NQT in a college, but there's another drama teacher who's working with year 12 in a class of extremely bright, sometimes arrogant teens. In my experience, they're the worst ones. It's the arrogant ones in some of the posher schools that were the most difficult. They just used to sit there and say, come on, dance for me. So nothing has happened, but they loved the teacher they had before. How do I bond with them? How do I make a fresh start? So we're talking in a different way. We're talking about connections and relationships. Howell, what do you reckon?
Yeah, well, I was just, and Lisa nailed it in her response to Craig, I think, and maybe this will help Katie as well. I think, well, particularly with Craig's year 9, I think year 9 are the toughest. I really do. And other people may disagree, but as a drama teacher, year 9 were the tough nuts to crack, because most of them have realised that they're not taking drama at GCSE, so they don't see the point of it. And it's not national curriculum, so it's seen as like a bit of dead time for some. So one thing you can do, and I'm thinking of Craig particularly in this response, is look at the curriculum and what you're being asked to teach. There's a lot that could be covered in year 9, and I'm happy if Craig wants to get in touch, I can have a longer conversation with him about this, because there's some year 9 curriculum that I've seen in some schools which is frankly just embarrassing, and it's basically kids making up plays without any depth or any insight into what drama is or what educational drama should be. Bad drama, essentially. So I think one thing you could do, Craig, is go and look at your curriculum. The other thing is you've got to remember with year 9, and it's same for the PE teachers. I think it's where you've got a queue of kids queuing up at your door. You've got 10 kids who are absolutely up for it. In PE, it's the sporty kids. In drama, it's the Glee Club kids. Then you've got like 10 kids at the back end of the queue who aren't bothered, and it's the same with PE. They've got notes because they've not got the kit. And then you've got this group in the middle who actually just want to crack on, will do everything you ask them to do, but they kind of need some protection in. So if you think about it in terms of this, and this might be useful for you as well, Katie, is how do you protect those children in to being with you? And when I say protect in, it's like they're arriving in. What stepping stones have you put in place, metaphorical, that the kids are gonna step over so that eventually they cross a rough river and they're with you and they want to be with you? Now, what Lisa was saying about being seen around school and going having dinner with the kids when you can and stuff like that, that's absolutely spot on. I think the stepping stones coming in is showing kids that you're absolutely human, that you absolutely mean business. You absolutely are prepared and ready to go. And it's not just a load of worksheets. It's not just a set of instructions and lesson objectives on a whiteboard. It's absolutely the studio. If you're lucky enough to have one, I had a classroom painted black eventually. But if you've got somewhere, then you can absolutely make the space your own and teach the kids the expectations that you want from them. Mean business, but you don't have to be mean to do that. And the thing that triggers in my head with that is the idea of and I don't know if I'm allowed to use this word. It's not what Lisa said, but it's banter. And the thing I found with the white working class kids in Barnsley, which was the kids I was teaching in year 9, for instance, they really responded to a bit of warm, gentle humour. They really responded to a bit of, I call it banter, but I don't mean misogynist, nasty, horrible banter. I mean banter for learning. Write that down. BFL. Just a bit of chat as kids are coming in. And that's one of the stepping stones that you can get them across. That's in the first 2 minutes of the lesson. But Craig, get in touch with me about that. And if I may, just to Katie, about the know-alls, the arrogance and all that. And you get kids, particularly in drama, in music, and it's almost like they're almost unteachable, but not in the ways you expect. It's because they think they know anything. And I think what you can do as a teacher, and this isn't just about behaviour, this isn't just about settlement or drama, it's about showing the kids how much you know, how passionate you are, and how engaged you are with the work that you're trying to teach. And I think sometimes some teachers come a cropper for this because they know everything. They're experts on the subjects, but they're not very good at communicating it to kids who perhaps aren't that bothered. So it's how do we build the botheredness?
That's good. And you talk about, your new book's going to be about botheredness, and yes, some of this stuff is in there in your famous award-winning Oops book is about that sort of thing as well. I'm going to ask Jackie, but just before I do, Krista, I want you can see the Q&A, can't you, Krista? If you look at the question that's come in from Holly Saunders, can you have a think about that? I'll come to you next, and you can perhaps answer that in terms of a class of where some of them are fine and some of them aren't, and how to keep them all going and everything. We'll come to you on that one next. Is that okay? Okay. So Jackie, from a leadership position, and not just in terms of behaviour, but just generally, what sort of support do you think every NQT should expect from a head teacher, from the leadership team in their first year?
I think the first thing to bear in mind about your leaders is that they are often, we think when we're NQTs, we think all these leaders and the head and the deputy and the head of subject are all so, in control, so know what they're doing and are like our heroes. But the truth is often they struggle and they're finding it hard, and they are just sometimes also in that sort of reptilian brain state because they've got very hard jobs to do. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. So if you ask for help and don't get a short, sort of brusque sort of response, don't give up on it, because you absolutely deserve to have support. And the only way you're going to get that is to be really open and honest about what's going on. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, and don't be afraid to get feedback and to say, how am I doing? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Because we say kids need to get feedback, but so do we. And so do your leaders. You know, they need to know how they're doing as in supporting you. And if you're not getting enough support, then in a non-aggressive, non-self-defensive way, just say exactly what it is you need. If you'd like someone to come in and teach, model the lesson and you watch it, or you'd like some more feedback, and welcome people into your classroom to see what you're doing so that they can give you feedback on what's going right, what's going wrong, and to give you that fantastic insight about, yeah, with that kid, they're always like that, don't worry about it. So they should, I think you definitely you should have a really good mentor, and they're not all good, let's be honest. If you get really lucky, you'll have a mentor who is there for you, listens to you, coaches you. And when I say coach, I don't mean just tells you how to do a lesson plan. I mean, really deeply listens to your problems and your feelings and what's going on, and gives you ways to reframe it and think about it in a new way and have a positive, optimistic viewpoint about things. Because every one of us here, you've heard our problems. I've run out of a classroom crying, you know, in my early days, and we all have. And in a weird way, we end up being better teachers with that struggle. You know, struggle means you're growing, it means you're developing all your new learning that you need to develop. And the thing is to actually talk about what help you need and to ask for it. And that should be from your mentor, it should be from your head of subject. And you might not find they're always the right person to turn to. So there might be somebody else in the school, might be the Senko, might be a TA actually. Some of the TAs are fantastic for offering support and friendship and connection, and just be honest about how you're feeling. And don't be afraid to feel those emotions. Yeah, you will cry, you will scream, you will feel upset sometimes, and that's okay. You wouldn't be normal if you didn't. Don't be afraid of all the emotions you're going to feel, the ups and downs of. Sometimes all of us lot have felt, I can't be a teacher anymore, I just can't do it. You know, we've all felt like that at times, and you will feel like that at times as well. And that doesn't mean to say tomorrow you're not going to feel completely different. And the other big tip about this is you'll have a class, and because I was an AST and other ASTs will say, we were always given the hardest classes, weren't we, ASTs? Always, you were given the toughest classes because you're an AST, why wouldn't you? Everyone else thought you deserved the toughest classes. And you'd have a bad lesson, a crap lesson, which we'd all teach, even if we were an AST. And then we go home and think, that's it, I've lost it, I've lost my knack, whatever it might be. And then you go in the next time to that class and think, are they going to remember how shit I was last time? And they don't remember. They sort of, you start again with them and you go in, you're consistent, as everyone's been saying, consistency, high expectations, knowing that the naughtiest kid in the class, the one that least you think deserves your love, needs it the most. The one that is the hardest, most difficult, challenging kid needs you to act as if they're your favorite. And I found that was such a good tip. If you imagine that they are your absolute favorite, the most difficult one to connect with, and that way you'll take an interest in what they do outside of school and all the things people have said today. But certainly don't the help you get from the leaders in your school, your head teacher, you know, chat to them, smile at them, tell them how you're getting on. They should be asking you how you're getting on. A really good head teacher absolutely cares about their NQTs and meets with them and listens to feedback about how they're getting on. And that's what should be happening. And if that's not happening, ask someone why not, and try to, in a gentle, loving sort of way, just seek out the help you need, because that will take you through, and know that they've been through it. Whoever's the head teacher, they've been through the NQT year as well. They know how tough it is. So
the message that head teachers are humans too, and are going through it. Again, on Twitter, there are people who are in their first headship. You see them tweeting and just what they're, I mean, especially this particular year, but just what they're experiencing, and they're human. There was one tweeting earlier, the first time in his life he'd had an ambulance at school. and dealt with it. But he said inside I was screaming, I think is how he described it.
Exactly. When you become head teacher, it's like that every day. It's like, what crisis is going to happen today? And everyone wants a piece of you and thinks you've got all the answers. And just like teaching, it is a performance. You know, teaching is a performance, and sometimes you have to bluff it and fake it as a head. And we have to do that in the classroom as well. That's what we have to do sometimes with our worst class. You know, you go in there, they say to you, like a kid once said to me, "Miss, you hate us, don't you?" And I just said, "No, I absolutely love you. You're my favourite class." They weren't, obviously, but we all say that because actually they sort of said, "Oh," and they turned out to be my favourite class because they were tough. And when you make progress with those tough kids, it gives you such a buzz. It gives you such a buzz. They are the kids that are going to make you feel you want to carry on being a teacher. Can I just answer the question that came up about metacognition? Or
can we come back to that? Can we come back to that?
Yes,
So hold that thought. In terms of this, I remember a teacher years ago asking me what she could do with her least favourite class. She was a history teacher, I think. And I just said, well, pretend they're your favourite class. So she went, oh, okay. And she said within 4 weeks, she'd turned them around. She smiled. She said, "I'm pleased to see you. Thank you for coming. I enjoyed teaching you." And it was all a lie at that point, but fake it till you make it, like you said, Jackie. And then that warmed the class to her and her to them. And she saw things in them that she hadn't seen before, and vice versa. And this idea about beliefs, that sort of sticks as well. That so many schools you go into, it's, oh, well, kids from around here, or kids from that estate, or kids from that road, or kids from that family. I think Freud supposedly said, we bleed our beliefs through every pore. So if you think, yeah, well, that group's going to be like that, or that kid's going to be like that, it comes through in the tone of voice, the language that you use. So just beware of the words that you're using, the language that you're using. If you say to one child, yeah, when you go to university, you'll need this. And if you say to the other child, yeah, if you go to university, you'll need that. It's the only difference between those two sentences is when and if. But that message is very powerful, and it is received. And they do understand that this kid you believe in, this me, but you don't believe in me quite so much. And linked to that, one of the things I used to do, whether they still do it in secondary school, I don't know, I should imagine they probably do, kids on report. Whenever I used to get a kid on report, beginning of the lesson, I used to hand the report card, and I used to write excellent and hand it straight back at the beginning of the lesson. And they said, "Oh, Mr. Gilbert, you've done it all wrong. You're supposed to do it at the end of the lesson after I've been naughty." And I'm saying, no, it's going to be fine. And I honestly never had to change what I wrote on the report card. And over the years, when I've mentioned that to teachers who've tried it, they said it does work. And there's a Goethe, the German poet, line. He says, "If you treat me as who I am, you make me worse. And if you treat me as who I'm capable of becoming, you help me become that." And that's what we're getting at with that sort of idea of the faking it till you make it. We'll come back to metacognition, Jackie, because I know that's a big area of yours. So if you just mute yourself for now, and we'll come to Krista. Let me just set that up with the question that I gave you from Holly, Krista, wasn't it? It was an English teacher. How do I deal with a class of extremes? A third are silent, the audience, she calls them. A third are actively disruptive, from unplugging the computer cables to unusual outbursts. One with ADHD, the rest of them just like the attention. A third are engaged in learning, desperate for the learning to go on, putting their hands up and getting frustrated from the hold-ups. Year 8 and very much fun in their theory. Can do work in silence, but discussion gets unstructured as the teacher talking time. Thanks so much. So, Krista, from your experience, where can Holly go next?
All right, okay. This sounds like a normal class. It sounds like, classes happened year 8, absolutely perfect, can continue into year 9, like Howell was saying earlier, because they're, it's that thing of they're cute little year 7s who are very compliant, and puberty is hitting them, so it's going to be a rocky road probably to the end of year 9, as like Howell was saying earlier, and obviously Lisa's alluded to. It's a really tricky time, but you find the good. There is some good in there. It is obviously the ones that are silent, are they learning? There is that, is there evidence of their learning? Because I'm sure you're going to have to be able to answer those questions. But those that are being quite outrageous, these massive outbursts, and actually come into the it says only one child had ADHD. So has that child got support? Is there another adult in the classroom? Should there be another adult in the classroom? Why, is that child sat in the best possible seat for them? And one of the things that I would do, because I wrote a few blogs about this a few years ago, because it was even as a teacher who'd been teaching many years, and I was a middle leader and assistant head at the time. I'd taken on this year 8 class, and I'd taken some characters from other classes, because I was thinking, I'm the head of languages and I'm assistant head in this school. I can do this. but I'd created this really difficult class of about 35 kids that I couldn't really get in, but they needed to be in my room because I didn't want them being anywhere else, disrupting other classrooms and being kicked out within a few minutes. No disrespect to those teachers, but actually they're not paid to just, have rows with those kids. I wanted them to really progress with learning with the group. So I thought, well, I'll do it. And I created a massive issue for myself. So what I did was, right, okay, they fast became my worst group, as Jackie said, and actually I didn't want to teach them. So my way of doing this was like, but just that in itself was me inside not giving it my everything. It was I'm bracing myself for something to go wrong, and I didn't want to do that because that's already deciding that class is not going to go well, and it's really difficult to do when you're that tired. But what I did was say, do you know what? You, as Jackie said, are my favourite class. I love teaching you. This is the best line you will give. It's an Oscar-winning performance because you've got to say it with your eyes right the way through it. All your body language, everything, the voice, the tone, everything. Make sure you get that right. And, you have to make sure that what you do is say, well, right, guys, this is what we want to do. This is where I want us to go. I want us to be able to get to this point, but we can't because there's these things going on. So here we go. We're going to stop. We're going to look at this. But do you know what? Some of you are a bit disruptive where you sit. So I'm going to give you a choice. I want you to find your optimal learning seat. And the kids look at each other and they're going, right, Howell, I'm going to sit next to you because we're going to muck about in the back row. And I go, oh, Howell, I'm really sorry, my love. You know how much I love you, because Howell's a little tinker. I want you right at the front of my class. So because I really need to be close to you, I really need to be. Now, I know that you have to have seating plans because of COVID. I know that, but actually you might be able to change it if you have a discussion with the pastoral leader and actually with heads of department as well, because you maybe need support with this. And actually those children choosing their own seat, choosing who they're sitting next to, it's their optimal learning seat, okay? And obviously, if you've got that tracked in your on your seating plan, then actually you could then, if in the event of something, someone becoming unwell or something happening, then you can put it there. In terms of those kids that aren't engaging, then give them an opportunity to engage. You may not be able to give them a physical coin. There's something called Kagan Cooperative Learning Strategies, and you can give them, like, I went to, am I allowed to say a name? Argos, and got a casino chips kit, and I used to give out physical casino chips, and the kids used to have to spend them. They used to have to spend them by speaking. So those kids, like, say, Howell and me, who'd be chat, 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 but someone like Lisa or Nina, who were really quiet and good, I'd give Lisa and Nina more chips, so they had to spend. And if they didn't spend them by making good, thoughtful contributions in the lesson, then I would then have to give them more next lesson. Now, if you can't give them physical things, because I know we can't at the moment with COVID, if you've got a seating plan, you can just put it on there, or you can project it on the board. It's just a really nice way of getting kids thinking about how they're contributing. And those quiet kids, those ones, you need them to engage. But the ones that are with the outbursts, like the me and Howells, the big, loud, chatty ones that want to interrupt and want to share and want to maybe take the lesson into a different direction, you give them less. So they really have to be thoughtful and careful about what they say. Now, they might sit there and do a proper kind of, ooh, don't want to do it, ooh, miss, I ate you, ooh, you ate me. It's like, no, you've got so much to say, but I really want you to think very carefully about how you contribute and maybe do it like that. And in terms of things like pulling cables out and things like that, if you can, get rid of it, get rid of the distraction, get rid of it out of their way. And if it's becoming such a point that you can't move classrooms and you can't change your seating plan, then you really do have to discuss it either with your buddy or your mentor and just say, do you know what, the constant fiddling with things that are there is impacting on their learning and it's just distracting them. I need it gone. So either another classroom or just get rid of it. And I have been in a situation where I gave up my classroom as a leader and gave it to an NQT so they had the consistency, because they were teaching in 4 different classrooms for 5 lessons across a fortnight, and 3 of those classrooms were computer rooms. And it's just, mouse, keyboard, flicking, just all manner of things. And it's just not fair. It's just not fair to do that. But again, I know that COVID's different. And so you may have to move from classroom to classroom. And so when you get there, kids are already maybe disengaged. I know Howell, one of the first times I ever saw that great man, Hywel Roberts, speak, he spoke about dead time. And it's that go into the classroom beforehand, maybe if you are a traveling teacher and have to move because the children don't come to you, and literally have them thinking about something. So some questions, previous homework, some schools like to do quizzes. And that actually is a really good way of getting them thinking about what you're doing while you're traveling there. And catch them being good, catch them being really good, because not every bit of a lesson is bad all the time. And I know that you know that, but just, maybe video yourself or record the sound, and you'll be able to hear the good stuff that happens, because one thing we always do as human beings is just focus on the negative. So make sure that we catch them being good and just praise them for being good. Say, oh, I really love that lesson today. It was a brilliant lesson because of these things. That's a really good thing to do.
Catching them in, not catching them out, which is, which involves just a flick of our attention, really, and seeing the positives more than we see the negatives, and there will be positives in there. There's a question, thank you, Krista. I mean, you brought up the C word, and there's a question there from Laura, but I want to move away a little bit from behaviour, because there's some other things I want to touch on. Somebody's asking about time management. There's also a question about EAL that I wanted to bounce to Nina. So I just wondered, Lisa, in the Q&A, whether you've got any thoughts for Laura's question, and can maybe just type an answer in there, or maybe come back to it or something like that, or we can do it via email. I think you can type an answer in there. Laura was asking about, because of the COVID situation, the kids are stuck in their desks at their tables all the time, and the teachers are moving backwards and forwards, and the kids haven't got the chance to sort of burn off their energy. So I'll see if Lisa's got some thoughts on that from her work with EAL at the moment. But so hopefully Laura will get your question answered directly. But Nina, so another Jackson, no relation. Francesca, how to help students who are EAL and speak no English? What are your thoughts on that situation as a non-English first language speaker yourself?
Oh, well, I think for a start, that's a well-tidy, lush-like question, isn't it? So, from my experience of obviously being English as my second language, and of working with so many students who are literally who have had no English at all, many different strands that you can think about. Okay, first of all, the visual cues. Now, whether or not you've actually got sets of cards or you've got a digital device, okay, you can use some of the send apps that work with communication with some of our students who have difficulty sometimes in actually verbalizing things. You can use some of those send apps with your EAL students. What you can also do as well, remember that on all digital devices now, okay, you have the ability to translate. However, we know that there's some seriously dodgy translations out there. So I'm going to recommend to you the best one that you or they can speak into their native language, and it flips it right over, and it is perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the world of I Translate. I'll put the link of the app in for you in a little while. Digital device, this is not a phone. This is a mobile learning unit. It's my friend, it's my helper. And occasionally I have been really naughty, and where phones and things were banned in school years ago, I've taken my digital device to enhance communication, to be able to maybe give a message to somebody or explain the learning objectives or what I'm asking them to do in the lesson in their own language. But what I will also do as well sometimes is actually to try to communicate through the eyes, okay? Simple things like the gesture of the physicalities, of giving the reinforcement, of giving the support. So you've got a three-pronged approach. You've got the effective use of the digital devices. I can produce some appropriate applications for you. By the way, do not trust Google Translate. I mean, even the Welsh stuff, okay, and it gets, from English to Welsh, it's really dodgy. I mean, real dodgy, okay? So if you've got children who've got no English at all and they're coming to you, you need to get it right so that translation is correct. So iTranslate is your best thing. It is free. If you want to upgrade to the professional one, I think it costs right now about 99p, but I'll put a list together for you. Get some basic connective visual cards, okay? Make your EAL student a pack of keyring cards. Things like, you know, I'd like to, this is work, listen to me, or whatever the case may be. You may also have some students in your classroom who are really, really good as what I call associative emotive buddies, who will reinforce and make sure that the situation in the classroom is a safe environment for that learner. We know that visual cards are brilliant, and if I could just sort of, oh, I can put my hands on some right now for you, look. These are very basic cards that obviously we sometimes use when we're on Zoom, or for a fact that they take 2 minutes to make, okay? Get yourself some keyring ones, create them, you can buy them. I mean, there's some time management for you, isn't it? Oh, my EAL students, what they need is they need some communication cards. So I need to take some time out for myself, making an appointment with myself to do this task so I can communicate, but also making an appointment with yourself when you're not doing any work at all. Make an appointment with yourself. You have a meeting. They won't ask you, come out of a meeting, because you could say, oh, well, my appointment or my meeting, I'm going for colonic irrigation, and they'll never ask you ever again. So tying in a little bit of the EAL with the actual make appointment, time management and workload, I can put some stuff together for you on that as well, particularly to do with your well-being. Because I don't want to talk too much tonight, because you know I have verbal diarrhea sometimes. So right now I'm going to iced.
Verbal diarrhea and colonic irrigation all in one message. Fantastic, you heard it here first. Thank you for that, and we will come back to on the well-being side of things just briefly, especially with the world that we're living in at the moment. My tip, I suppose, for my NQT year for time management, I realised at that point that there's a thing that we've all got, and excuse my French, I'm a French teacher, I can do that. It's called the fuck it switch. The job is always bigger. The job is always bigger than you are. You will never, ever complete the job. And the teachers who used to try and stay there and get the job done were the ones who were struggling the most. And I just knew at some point you just had to go, okay, that's it. I'm going home now. So, and I still do, Nina knows this, we still will, you know, click the fuck it switch every now and again and just say, that's it, I'm just walking away. And you come back to it with fresh eyes. So don't end each day beating yourself up thinking you haven't done it and you're a bad person for that. Just flick your switch and it'll be there tomorrow. It'll be okay. Anybody else got anything they want to add in terms of time management and workload and having a life and the work-life balance? Anybody, anything you want to add on that, any of you? Krista.
I was just going to say, if you have a job to do and when the world kind of shut down, when you guys, I guess, were trainees, and those of you that are here listening with us, people started tidying their rooms and doing all these amazing decoration things. And it's quite amazing what you do if you give yourself 1 hour. So if you put 60 minutes into your phone for 1 hour, get a bin bag, sort out your wardrobe, whatever it is you can do, it's amazing. If you give yourself the day, you won't do it. You'll just do that one drawer and then empty stuff out and your room will be worse than what it was. But if you give yourself 1 hour or 30 minutes, or say my cutoff point is 4:15, I have to be out of the door because it gets really dark outside school, at 4:15. It's a way of looking after yourself, and actually it's amazing what you can get done. You turn your phone over because you've set your alarm on and you just do what you can in that time, and that's really, really important to do. And then at least if you set yourself a deadline of what time you're going to leave school and set your alarm for that, and you've got books to mark, lessons to plan, whatever it is you've got to do, you'll do it in that time. But if you give yourself, oh, I'm going to be here until I've done it all, you won't ever go home. And the kids already think that we roll out sleeping bags and sleep underneath our desks, don't they? So, there's no need to do that.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to ask Jackie in just a minute if she's got something to say on that. That would be good. But also want to ask her about the looking after yourself side of things. I know that's something that's really important. There's a question coming from Anonymous about a child with mutism. I just wondered, it's a little bit specific for the 50 minutes we've got left, but Nina might want to answer Anonymous attendee. Oh, there's stuff in there about that. So maybe just put something in there about that or email us afterwards as well. But Howell, have you got anything from this sort of the time management, work-life balance? You seem a genuinely relaxed, cool, calm, collected sort of guy in order.
That's very nice, thank you. I think the time management thing is there's the obvious stuff around, and it's difficult. And I think Krista's advice is really good about just saying, right, you know, tonight I'm not doing any work. I'm going to forget the marking. I'm going to accidentally leave it in school, so that tomorrow morning I'm just going to have to take the heat on that. And if I've said to the kids they're going to get the results today, I'll just say, well, you're not getting them today, you're getting the results tomorrow, and I'm going to take a night off. I think obviously we're living in strange times as well at the moment, so in some parts of the country you can't even go out to see your mates and share your experiences of year 8 to your disinterested friends, but you know, we're in that world now, so I suppose looking after yourself is more important now than ever. I think it's definitely doing stuff like this. I think it's joining in conversations. Obviously this one we're focusing on education and learning, but what about the other stuff that you're interested in? I manage my time now, and I get overwhelmed a little occasionally with what I'm expected to do and what I need to do. But I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, and I'm trying to have a laugh, you know, and it's not easy at the moment. You're just trying to have a laugh, and I think if that's what you feel you're missing, then you might have to go looking for it. It's just at the moment you might have to go looking for it online. You know, if you've not got it in your own house, you know, then you're gonna have to go out and seek it out. You just get in touch with me, I'll have a laugh with you.
And you are multitasking, because Howell's actually delivering this webinar from inside his shower cubicle, as you can tell by the curtain.
It's not easy, but if I don't wash my feet, I get into bother. They look like turnips.
Jackie, what do you want to say also with regard to sort of self-care and the time management thing? And then we've got about 10 minutes to go, so we need to start.
Yeah, no, I'll keep it short. I was just going to link it actually to the metacognition thing, because I think when, you know, if you really think about how much time you spend thinking and worrying about stuff, you know, that takes up a lot of your energy and time, you know, thinking and worrying about. And then linked to that is avoidance and displacement activity. So what happens is you sort of think, oh, I've got this massive pile of stuff to do, and I'm really worried about I'm going to do it. So I give, you know, my friend a ring and worry a lot about that. And then I sort of perhaps do, you know, watch something and look at social media or something and see that everyone else seems to be having a great life and I'm not. And, you know, I think there's a lot of time we spend, you know, in our heads thinking about stuff, which could be, and I think mindfulness and meditation, and even just taking 5 minutes on a Headspace app per day to clear your head so that you can be more focused, you'll get more done in a shorter time if you've got a clear head and you're not worried and you're not freaking out and in a state about stuff. And I suppose that links to the metacognition stuff, because one of the things that I found out when I was writing my Learner's Toolkit book, talking to John Hattie, was that I was listening to a program about the kids that did the best in lockdown with the home learning was those who were really good at self-regulation, and really self-regulation, metacognition, learning to learn, all that stuff, which I'm absolutely passionate about. And if people want to know more, do email me. I'm happy to share stuff with you. It's really sort of helping us as teachers, first of all. If we don't get it, we're not going to help our kids get it in terms of metacognition and mindset and being able to have that self-regulation stuff. But it's almost like making it part of your classroom culture that we actually talk about our thinking. That if we solve a problem, we talk about how we thought about it, and we share that in, you know, voice it. And that's part of how we conduct our lessons. And we talk about what we've learned today and how we learned it and what worked best for us, and understand how our brains work and how every brain is an individual brain that has a way of learning that might be slightly different to somebody else, and what I get somebody else won't get, and I can share this, and that's where peer coaching can come in useful. So, you know, that seeing struggle as growth, so that kids in the class know that, you know, when you're hurting, your brain's hurting, you're struggling with this, that's when you're growing your new neural pathways, that's when you are doing the real hard learning stuff. And just having that constant sort of conversation with your kids, that when we're learning stuff is always becoming conscious of your thinking. And I think that's what would really help with developing sort of metacognition and self-regulation. So I haven't got much time to say much more. But
somebody's asking about COVID anxiety at the moment as well. And I think that's just all the things you've just described, but just making sure you're doing more of it, I suppose. Yeah, is that right?
Absolutely. And just saying it's okay to feel scared. And you know what? I'm not certain of the future, and neither are you, and none of us can control the future. Nothing could have taught us more about that than COVID. None of us know what the future is. And do you know what? We've got to just be able to go with that, not try and control it, just surf the waves of life. And as an NQT, that's what you'll be doing. You'll be on the edge, sometimes feeling that are going to fall off, and that's okay too. And kids need to know that's okay, because they'll have parents at home that might be over anxious. And you know what? Anxiety and worrying about stuff never ever actually helps. You know, you spend so much of your time worrying and obsessing about it and thinking about the future. I call it time traveling, going back to the past and worrying what you did and then worry about what might happen in the future. That's a lot of energy you're using up there that you could spend doing something like being in this moment and actually getting stuff done.
On our blog pages, I'll come to you next, Nina, because I want to talk what you've got to say about self-care. But just when you talked about being on the edge, Jackie, I know you did a blog for us quite early on in lockdown, which was about this idea about just living just on that edge, and that it's okay, that it's exciting, and that it's just be aware of the feelings, but we're all in that sort of situation. So if you go to our blog pages and just type in Jackie Beere's name and do it as a search that way, or else we'll email it to you later. It's life on the edge, but we're all there, and it's okay. And there's a line, I think Andy Vass, another one of our associates, talked about this. We're doing some work around coaching during lockdown. He said there's a line, and here's the things you can control, and here's the things you can't control. And knowing where that line is and not fighting it is really important. And that's useful whether there's a pandemic going on or not. There are certain things that are there, and there are certain things that are there, and just know what the difference is really helpful. We've got 6 minutes left. I want all of you to sort of finish off with what you would say to your NQT self, looking back now. We'll finish with that one. But Nina, just in terms of the self-care and the well-being for the students, for the children, for yourselves, what's your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I'm going to tie this in specifically with the anxiety part as well. First of all, can I just say, we create our own anxiety, and the problem is we want to always run away from it. So I'm going to ask you to do something called the wreck-it approach, which is, number one, to recognise that you are creating this anxiety, because obviously you have these worries about COVID, etc. Embrace it and know that actually you and your hamster thinking wheel brain is going round with all these different things that are going on, but then control it by actually embracing it, controlling it by then saying, right, okay, this is what I need to do as part of my self-care to know, first of all, I'm safe. I'm safe. I have people around me. Right now, I'm not unhealthy. I'm actually absolutely fine in this space. Self-care, self-compassion, and gratitude. So I'm going to start with 3 simple things. Capture in that moment that you are okay and there's nothing going on around you and you're safe and you're healthy and you're not about to drop to your feet. Secondly, it doesn't matter how small it is. Simple is the new complex. Think about where your journey has been from the morning to now and all the quick celebratory wins. You got up, you got dressed, you've got yourself to school, you said good morning, you've had at least 33 cups of coffee, you're surviving, you're managing your time, you've got a do not disturb sign for your door, you're going to set a timer, you're going to learn actually to say no for the things that are not going to give you the right opportunity. Self-care is actually you putting yourself first. Do that meeting, get the appointment, learn to say no. Different to what Ian was saying earlier about embracing the yes for progress, but you do need to learn how to say no. And I can share some things with that at a later date. But if you don't look after yourself first, trust me, nobody else is going to do it. Okay? So you've got to find the strength. I've suffered with COVID anxiety. I was frightened to go outside the front door, but now I do step out, step in, step out, step in, and then actually sort of works in my physical routine as well for this beautiful body. Just saying.
That's how you approach an escalator as well, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that's a whole other story. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Just some things. Kate McAllister is the name of James Mannion's companion who wrote the literary companion who wrote that book. So thank you, Krista, for that one. It's a good book. I put into the chat Jackie's blog about living on the edge. I just found out, so that's in there now. And what I also put into the blog, just thinking about time management, Jim Smith, one of our associates, wrote a book which was probably one of our bestsellers for quite a while, actually, called The Lazy Teacher's Handbook. And it's full of practical ideas that are all about how can I get them to do more, and that frees me up to do the things that only I can do. It's just full of ideas to just pass the baton a lot more over to the students in the classroom. And in terms of what I wished I'd known when what I would say to myself as an NQT, it would be to give more of that responsibility and that control in a managed and effective and professional way over to the young people, and not trying to lead everything quite so much, because I know it would have made me less tired and a more effective teacher, and brought more out of the young people in my various classes. So that's what I would say to myself. Krista, what would you say to yourself as an NQT? And it does make me feel old that I was doing an inset in your school when you were an NQT, so thanks for that.
Which was quite a long time ago. Yes, it was. What would I say to myself? I would say, because there is this pressure for students to always be achieving and always be working in silence and always be achieving the best possible results. And do you know what? It's really important to know your kids really well, because you can't plan an effective lesson unless you know them all really well. You know what makes them tick, you know what they like. They may not like your subject, but you know what? The stuff that they do like, it might be a favourite film, it might be something like that, that you can weave into your lesson, and actually you've got them then because you go, oh, you might like this, you know, Jimmy, it's about, I don't know, Jimi Hendrix or something, because you're doing that and it's a bit of something that you like. And if you focus on those relationships, the behavior will come, as will the learning. But if you try and do the learning and try to, you know, do all those lessons, and of course we need to use the hour, 30, 40 minutes, however much time we've got, we have to use it as effectively as possible. But please don't tell me that building really good, strong, purposeful relationships, professional relationships with our learners is not important, because that is the absolute foundation. Once they trust you, they like you, they trust you, they will grow to love your subject because you're one of their people.
Hear, hear. Relationships, excellent. Lisa, what would you go back and tell hold the cupboard door open and whisper to yourself what?
I would have that no emotional response. If I'd have learnt that a little bit quicker, I wouldn't have chucked a bin across the room. So I reckon that would be the one.
Emotional self-regulation, I think is the phrase at the moment. Jackie, that self-regulation, that's the thing that you were talking to John Hattie about. I know. What would you go back and tell your NQT self, Jackie?
The way to get that non-reaction is, you know, if you think about a spectrum and where and fear is at one end and love is at the other end, if you want to be less reactive emotionally in a negative way, live at the love end and not at the fear end, whether it comes to the kids, the staff, your colleagues, you know, escalators, spiders, whatever it might be. It's just try and live at that end, the love end, rather than the fear end, if that makes any sense.
I like it, and it's a spectrum. They're all just stages of how we are, and we can choose to be a little bit further that way or a little bit that way. I like that. Live at the love end. Ninja, how's your love end?
My love end's doing very well, thank you very much. I'll have you know. The tip to myself, always take a snack attack break in your pocket, because you never know when you're going to need to munch on something. Simple as.
That it just makes so much sense. It's just yes, the snack attack, munch, being prepared. Thank you, Nina.
Always.
Howell, do you want the last word then? What would you go back and say to yourself, apart from don't stick a Dead Poet Society on your exercise book?
Apart from that, I'd say that be a teacher be a maths, if you're a maths teacher, be a maths teacher, but then see yourself as a teacher, and then just see yourself as, if it makes you feel happy, see yourself as a public intellectual, but then just see yourself as a grown-up, and then see yourself as the Sherpa. And metaphorically, you are there to guide children through complex curriculum. You're there to hold their hands metaphorically and walk them through stuff that they don't understand, because that's why they're with you. And that might seem fairly obvious, but no one told me that. I was just delivering stuff. I was a deliverer, a bit like Amazon Man.
So to be the Sherpa.
Yeah, be the Sherpa.
Be the Sherpa, be the guide, to support them. Well, we overran by 3 minutes. Apologies for that, but everybody's still sitting there listening to this. Howell, Lisa, Nina, Jackie, Krista, thank you ever so much. Whenever I hear the associates speak, I'm always in awe of the experiences that they've had and the wisdom that they've had. And thank you for sharing and being honest today. I feel it's been really useful. This is being recorded. We will sort of top and tail it and put it out. Hopefully we'll have a chance to do that tomorrow. And then to all the delegates who came along, thank you for choosing the career of teaching. Thank you for coming into it, even though we knew it was going to be so hard given all that's going on with the COVID situation, let alone everything else. You're not alone. It might feel like it at some point, but you're not alone. We've all been there. We've all had the bad days. We've all had the fantastic days as well, which means that it is the job that's worth doing. You've got hopefully what you've seen is you at the start of a career now, and who knows where it will lead, but it will lead somewhere where you will be surrounded by interested, passionate people who genuinely want to make a difference. So you're definitely in the right place. Getting that job in the bank, that was the thing that that was a narrow escape. You're in the right place. If you're on half term, well done for getting this far. Enjoy it, relax, take some me time, flick the pocket switch. If you've just gone back after half term, good luck, take care. And if there's anything that we didn't answer or anything else that you want to find out about, drop me an email, Ian at Independent Thinking, I'll field it. I remember that I put the link in for the books, NQT 30, you get 30% off a whole load, not just books from Independent Thinking Press and the people here, but all sorts of things that might be useful for you as well. Everybody, thank you very much. See you again. Take care. Stay safe.